Welcome, Jan.
Hi, Jim.
How are you doing?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Yeah, just back from Corfu.
Yes, back from Greece.
Yeah. Welcome to be our 55th guest. Today we will talk about hidden dynamics in teams of co-owners. You're an expert in that field. Now, I think a lot of people might not know you were one of the kind of pioneers on LinkedIn to start doing trainings there, and maybe we start there, and then we go to your to the steps that you made with the compassionate leader, and
Mhm.
so. But maybe just introduce yourself to the people watching.
Yes, yes. If people, let's say, know me from the past, most of them it's because of my second book, How to Really Use LinkedIn. My previous company, networking coach, we were the first training partner of LinkedIn in the world. Then several years ago, I sold that company and I started two new projects. The first one is Soul Business, and the second is the Compassionate Leader.
Yeah.
And with Soul Business, I help owners of training, coaching, and consulting companies attract larger projects. Yeah, so larger projects which are more impactful and more fulfilling for themselves and for their clients. And so most of my clients there, they are experts in their fields already for many years, but they feel like, oh, I'm only asked for a short project or let's say a training course of 1 or 2 days, and I see that I've lots more potential, and I can do much more, but I don't get it sold to companies. So I've designed a roadmap on specific steps to do that. So that's Soul Business, and then with the Compassionate Leader. I make sure that teams of co-owners, co-founders, partners, and other people who jointly lead a company, that they can thrive as a team, and
Mhm.
as a result, that also their company thrives. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we will talk about teams, and you mainly want to focus on the impact of these founders and co-owners, or
Yeah, for me, what it's let's say they're a team like all teams, but there are specific dimensions to such teams. So let's say in general, let's say what you have in teams that people, for example, say yes during the meeting, but then afterwards do something else, that they find it difficult to address sensitive topics, that they don't communicate clearly, that they have different expectations. So that's kind of for all teams. But what you have with teams of co-founders and co-owners is that there are four extra dynamics. Is let's say not dynamics, but I don't want to confuse people with the rest of it, what we're going to talk about. But four different aspects. Is one is that they have a special bond. Right? They are family or a couple, or they study together, or they work together before. So there is a special bond.
okay.
The second is that most of them have invested their own money. Third, most of them are also jointly liable towards bank loans and stuff like that. And the fourth dimension is that they don't count their hours. Yeah. So those get, yeah, those aspects do something consciously and unconsciously with those teams that makes it on the one hand easier to gain results, and the other hand it also makes it more complex, or sometimes it's harder to get the results.
Okay. And can you explain that? Is it then that you get like two sides? One side is then the co-owners, and the other side is then the team. Is it like that, or
No,
what's
no, yeah. My focus, what I work with, is with the co-owners.
uh-huh.
So, but they are a team as well, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So most of the times I don't work with the other people in the company,
yeah.
the teams of the separate co-owners or the divisions or so. So I work with that specific level, because it's more complex, and there are lots of other companies who work with teams and do team training, team coaching, stuff like that. But there are not so many that are really focused on that specific area,
Yeah.
and so I specialized in that specific area of co-owners.
Yeah. So when there's one owner, you cannot do anything.
But let's say if someone asks for help, I will see if I can help them. But that's not my focus.
Yeah.
So the
So
real, yeah.
yeah. So okay, let's go to that team of co-owners. How is everything starting? They come with you with a problem, or it's like just in general that they want support to make everything like flow more?
Yeah, so indeed there are two, let's say, movements. Most of the time is there is a problem with
Yeah.
one co-owner or the team that they're already aware of that. But most of the time, it's one co-owner says, "Oh, I feel like I have a problem," and then it is kind of a team dynamic. Or there are teams that say, "Okay, we are aware of this and we want to develop, we want to evolve as a team."
Uh-huh.
And they want to evolve to what I call the inspiring vibe. So maybe we can look at the visual of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. So this one is let's say for me the two let's say this is one of my main uh, entry points that I use is which vibe is a team or a person or a company in. Right? You get a negative vibe, neutral vibe, positive vibe, or an inspiring vibe. And let's say the higher the vibe, the better the results, the
Yeah.
more people feel seen, the higher the well-being is, the more resilient they are, the easier it is to attract people for the company.
Uh-huh.
So, and two of the dynamics that influence the vibe, or the two main dynamics, are how safe does someone feel, or and how supported does someone feel. So this applies to everybody in every team, but it's especially important for the co-owners because their vibe is a ceiling for the rest of their team or their company.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's why I lead most of the times with this slide.
Yeah.
And
You want to go more in detail on this slide, or is it like you just want to show like an overview from negative to inspiring?
let's talk a little bit about the two axes,
Uh-huh.
feeling safe and feeling supported.
The second slide, you mean?
No. This slide is okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So the two dynamics here are feeling safe and feeling
Yeah.
supported. So what you see, uh, what does it mean for co-founders, for example? Feeling safe is how safe do I feel when I have a new idea to express that,
Mm-hmm.
and how safe do I feel with the financial state of of the company?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And um, so that's one axis, and the other axis is feeling supported. And what you see there is what most people, and this is not rocket science, but most people have not learned to ask for help or for support.
Uh-huh.
So that's one thing that we see everywhere. But we see with co-founders, they're all entrepreneurs, they have the tendency to have the idea that they have to do everything on their own.
Uh-huh.
And if they ask for help, that is a sign of weakness. What you also see that they feel more guilty when they are, let's say, when they need, for example, more rest. Yeah?
Uh-huh.
So when they feel like, okay, I need the support I need now is to have a little bit more time for my family. Oh, but then I'm not available that much for the rest of the company towards the co-owners, and they feel more guilty. And most of them have also a very strong sense of responsibility. So they're most of the times more looking to help other people than to ask for help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is one of the reasons why you get that kind of burnout for co-owners. There are many, from my opinion, there are several reasons why people get burnt out or bore out. But this is one for co-owners. And when people notice that from their fellow owners, what you see that people, if they are really attentive to that, say, okay, this is not going the right way, so I want to help. What most of us do is that we offer the support that we need ourselves, which is not always the support that someone else needs. And sometimes it has a negative effect.
Yeah.
For example, if someone, let's say that that I feel supported when I have a hard time, that I can talk about it, that I can vent in a negative way, but that I can talk about it. So, for example, let's assume you and I are working together, that make time for me to listen to me, and I can explain things, and then that might be enough for me. Like, okay, thank you. Now I can go on. But if you don't need that, but if you need that, if we're working on a project that really helping doing practical stuff, let's say moving furniture, for example, and I'm just like, what do I need to feel supported? I'm gonna listen to Jim. So I'm here. Oh, okay. How are you doing? And making time and very empathetically. Then you might feel like, oh, he's just wasting my time. I don't feel supported at all. On the contrary. So that's one of the things that I see a lot. So people are not asking for help, and when they offer help, they do it from their own perspective, their own worldview, or their own needs. So and then with the different let's say dimensions of co-owners, that they feel very responsible, not asking for help, seeing it as a weakness. This is sometimes say a harder topic for them.
Yeah. Is there an ideal mix for such a team?
What do you mean, ideal mix?
Yeah, mix. Everybody is talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever. Like, is there? I'm always looking like, if in a team, if it's like, if that team is complete, if it has all the dimensions, if it has all the types of people, let's say, to make a team successful.
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of business you're running. Some businesses are very, let's say, technologically technology driven, and then it's very important to have someone who's very knowledgeable about that, and probably also someone else is very good at doing sales, and then someone else is very good with people, and most of the times there are already three different kind of people, and one more the technical ones. So to use the cliches, and more the nerds. Then the salespeople were more extrovert most of the times, and then the people, again, the ones who are looking internally for the team, a little bit, let's say, more caring personalities. But it depends on the company. Yeah, if you are running a clothing store with three people, you need a little bit of knowledge about bookkeeping and let's say making the right decisions in buying the stock. But I think so you need someone there that has ideas, but then you can also have someone, let's say, an internal or external bookkeeper to that. But most of the times it's the feeling with the kind of brands and the fashion that it's more important there, and that they're on the same level, that they're not let's say that they don't have super different taste about fashion, that they are arguing the whole time about that. So for me, it depends on what kind of business it is.
Yeah, because I see a lot of people talking about diversity, but then I ask them, okay, what is it? Diversity? Is that two blue, two yellow, and one green? And yeah, it's for me like what is effective diversity? So that's always something that I keep in mind. And also for me, equity, inclusion, that's something else than diversity. It's like kind of justice. It's like, men and women are equal. Diversity is okay. You make a mix, but then you have to make them feel home in the team. That's, I think, the most difficult part.
Yeah, and I think it's let's say separate from gender or age or background.
Uh-huh.
For me, the most important thing about inclusion is one of the systemic principles.
Uh-huh.
I work a lot with constellations. In Dutch, it's called opstellingen.
Uh-huh.
So which is kind of systemic work which was introduced in the Western world by Bert Hellinger. Um, that everything has the right place
Uh-huh.
and everything is included, but it's more for example, um, let's say the right place is also, for example, three co-owners. One person comes with the idea, the original idea, and then they have some people, let's say the two other co-founders, for example, bringing more money than the first one, which can lead to discussions when business is not going that well.
Uh-huh.
But then it's also okay. What do you bring to the table, and is that seen? Is that included?
Mhm.
Is let's say the idea how much is that included, or is that doesn't that have a place on the table? It's only about money.
Mhm.
So for me, it's many times when there are problems in teams, it's more on a deeper level
Mhm.
about that than let's say in the gender statistics and stuff like that.
Yeah. Is that these constellations are they like accepted in a rather rational environment?
And yeah, and again, there it depends on what environment you have. Personally, let's say the companies I work with are not the multinationals,
Uh-huh.
but smaller companies, and there, for me, again, the generalizations, there is more openness to that, and also when they come to me, most of the times it's already because they already have a certain level of consciousness that they see, yeah, there is more than just the rational part.
Yeah.
And or they try it and they say, okay, it didn't work, so we need something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you screen before you start working with the companies? Do you screen? Do you have some kind of yeah demands or some criteria to say yes or no?
Yes. For me, yeah, let's say it's more. It's not a, let's say that a standard procedure or whatever. But for me, it's I check in different ways about their willingness to open up.
Okay. Yeah.
So if they and going beyond the rational part.
Yeah.
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 So we start always kind of, okay, what is the easiest thing is the rational part, but if we don't have a solution there, we need to go somewhere else. And are you willing to go there? And if I feel that it's not the case, then I don't work with them.
Yeah. And what are like in general the most common concerns in these type of teams?
Yeah, most common concerns is, yeah, when there is less revenue. Okay, what is going on? We tried everything in their mind, everything. So that's one thing. Or someone is on the verge of quitting, or let's say literally saying, okay, I'm gonna leave the company, or someone is not functioning anymore.
Mhm.
And functioning and could be ill, absent, they taking refuge in other stuff
Uh-huh.
like alcohol or drugs. Um, so, and for me, all those things, I, I I've learned to look at any behavior, anything what we call negative behavior, as pointers
Mhm.
to a deeper cause. And the deeper cause can be in the person themselves
Mhm.
or in a larger whole. And that's, for example, if we talk about constellations as well, very good tool. You don't need that, but it's a good tool if you're really stuck. One of the things you see in companies is that if in a team of co-owners there is something not resolved, that you see it in other levels in the company. For example, marketing and sales team who are not able to work together anymore. It's miscommunicating, blaming each other, stuff like that. If it's sometimes it's just very clear what it was about, and then it can be solved. But if it keeps going on and you say, we don't see where it comes from, most of the times is because of a problem between two co-owners.
Okay.
And so the company is showing, or on a different level, it is showing that that there is something that needs to be seen.
Yeah.
So I always see it as an invitation, like, okay, it is not nice that this is happening, but it's an invitation that something needs attention.
Yeah.
And many times when it got an attention, then everything runs smoothly again.
Yeah. Is that always step number one, to take away like the frustration and the problems before you can start strengthening the team?
Let's say on the first level, yes. So one of the dynamics that I also look at are the tensions. Right? So I see about tensions, and what many times I need to do is explain them that there is a difference between practical tensions, personal tensions, and interpersonal tensions. So practical tensions like, okay, internet is out, okay, we need to fix that. Personal tensions, for example, someone has a fear of speaking in public, or fears that there's not going to be enough money, and then interpersonal tensions between two people. Now, this is also, again, not rocket science, but what you see in let's say, professional environments, we use that rational part of our minds and our being a lot, and then we approach most of the tensions as practical tensions. And if it's a practical tension, that's good, but if it's a personal, interpersonal tension, that won't be solved. So that's as many times what I do first, say, okay, what kind of tension is it? Use kind of a small exercise or something to address the superficial tension. So people are like, okay, there is more openness, and then we go to what is the cause of this. And many times it's in a different, a practical tension, let's say, a personal tension. Most of the times doesn't have the root or the cause in the person, but in an interpersonal tension or a practical tension. So it's also interesting to see how they, let's say, that they change categories.
Yeah. And how important is connection in these teams?
Yeah, for me, there's always a connection, but then it's what kind of connection, of what, and there it is. For me, there's also not one rule. Okay, you need to have that kind of connection. You have to be strong bonds. You need to be the best friends. You need to do everything together, but it needs to be clear what it is. So, okay, so we work together, but we're not the best friends that spend the weekends and our holidays together. And for me, it's the clarity about that. Many times, it's also one of the dimensions that influence the vibe, and also let's say the two main dimensions is expectations of people, and especially the unspoken expectations, and even the expectations what we are not conscious about. And of course, that's the most difficult thing to see ourselves. But most of the times, other people can see that. So what I help teams to do is to address that in a very polite, non-aggressive way, but let's say, but that they do address it, so that they're not, let's say, what you see in many teams, but especially with co-owners, that they want to keep the harmony, but many times it's fake harmony. And also because most of us have never learned how to really deal with tensions and with conflicts.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that most of the times also need to do, to just give them a few tools to do that themselves.
Yeah. And are there different phases in creating that team between these owners? Do you have start phase and like growing phase, whatever kind of phases you go?
Yeah, for me, I work with the teams that are already there. Yeah, so it's you have the creation of companies, and so but I'm not um, so far. They don't come to me like, "Okay, can you help us?" We have the idea to start a company and to create a team. So far, I haven't worked with those requests.
Yeah. And the impact of age and generations, do you have experience with that? Like, there's, for me, a big shift going on with Gen Z.
Mhm.
Some people say like, yeah, no, not everybody is the same in Gen Z. I agree, but there's, for me, a big shift or a big difference between Gen Z, for example, and the boomers. So people who are now 20 are kind of reacting to what the people 40 years ago did. Do you have experience with that in these kind of teams?
Um, let's say there are a few things that I've learned along the way. Is yeah, that's there is an impact in what people have learned from their parents in the era that their parents
Mhm,
grew up in. Yeah.
mhm,
So if you see now people who are 60 and people who are 20, yeah, they learned other things from their parents who grew up in a different,
mhm,
let's say, world and a world view.
mhm,
So so also there it's important to understand sometimes that it's not a personal interpersonal tension, but it's a tension between worldviews.
mhm,
And also, if you're aware of that, then it's much easier to say, okay, this is not about us. Okay, so where do you come from? Where do I come from? Okay, so many times it's yeah. What I do is bring a little bit more understanding,
mhm.
so they can yeah, talk amongst themselves, so that I don't have to intervene anymore.
Yeah.
And but most of the teams that I work with, it's not like the co-owners. Most of the times they're kind of the same
Mhm,
age. Yeah. So that's one thing. Yeah, there are a few exceptions with family businesses where there
mhm.
are several generations.
Yeah.
So there it's very important also to take that into account, and also to um, if, let's say, the grandfather is retiring, that it's done, let's say, the goodbye, and that is done in the right way, that there's kind of a ritual, a goodbye party or whatever,
Mhm,
and there is literally, let's say, set by the grandfather, like, okay, now my son and my grandson are the new owners.
uh-huh,
Because many times that you see, and then again on a deeper level, what we see with constellations is that people are still loyal to the grandfather and not listening to the son and the grandson.
mhm,
And that's also on a conscious level. So that's very important to pay attention to those rituals, and the what you see with the whole the COVID period, that most of those rituals, I call it ritual, but they're, say, just small parties most of the times, that they are skipped.
uh-huh,
And that's what I one of my crusades, like, okay, bring that attention again. All the things you did before, there's a reason that we did that before, and don't forget that. um,
yeah. Do you see rebels in these kind of teams?
yes, and most of the times when there are real rebels,
Yeah.
it is again on unconscious part, is that they picking up on something that is valuable, that is on the verge of being excluded.
Uh-huh.
For example, what I just said about parties, one of the companies I work with, they had let's say birthday parties for everybody, let's say, and more small things. but their company grew, and then with the COVID, home working and stuff like that, they abandoned that. And there was one person, that was not in the Corner team, but one of the employees. He became a rebel, and everybody was like, what is going on here? This is that was the first employee, the most loyal, and now he's such a rebel. And then he also didn't understand himself. And then at the constellation, we found out, this is a very important thing in the company, because it's linked to one of the values, family, and that's the company, all the employees are family, that was on the verge of being lost. So that's also one of the examples I wrote in my ebook. People can download it for free from the website of the Compassionate Leader. It's the compassionateleader.org. So that's one of the examples of the dynamics that I explained there.
Yeah. So having a rebel, it's kind of positive.
Yes, if you deal with it in the right way.
Yeah.
Again, if you investigate what it's pointing to. If it's someone, let's say, not being happy because of their home situation, okay, then needs to be dealt with that home situation, or if he or she doesn't want to do that, okay, that's something else. But many times it's about something in the company that it's on the verge of being lost or not included in the strategy, for example. So for me, it's always very valuable to investigate that.
Yeah. Are there other important insights that you want to share?
I can talk for hours, but I see that our half hour is already come to an end. But I have one slide if you want to do that. Or this is one of the things I learned from George Kohlreiser, the bonding cycle. Very briefly, it's 4 phases. So the first phase is attach, that you see on top. So everything, people always go through this cycle the whole time, in their personal lives, professional lives. So you attach to something. So it is a loose attachment. For example, a new office, or a new job, or a new car. So we attach a little bit to that. Then the second step is that you bond with that. And in that second step, you're going to put more emotional, more emotions, more of your energy into that. And the more energy you put in that, the more important it becomes, and also the stronger you are linked with that. And then life is dynamic, so there's always at shorter and longer term, there's the third phase, separate, that we separate from something. For example, we move offices, or we get a new company car, or we have a new colleague, or one of the co-owners retires. So then we start, let's say, making the transition from being connected to that to loosen that connection again from the bond phase. So loosen that. And then the fourth phase is grief phase. And in the grief phase, then what we do there is we, extract the energy that we put in the second phase. In the bond phase, we get that back out of that. So we have it available for new connections, for new attachments. So that is kind of the bonding cycle. But what we see in especially in the West, is that we kind of cut out the fourth phase, the grief phase. If you just see at our personal lives, when there is someone passes over, you get 1 day off, 3 days off of work, and then you have to be there again. So you don't get tired, and then you have to do that for every practical thing. Yeah? So you cannot say the energy and emotions that you put in the second part, the second phase, the bond phase, you don't have time to get that out. And then it's not available for new connections. So if we translate that to the workplace, what you see a lot when you are a co-owner of a company, or a CEO, or whatever, most of the times you are the ones who are in charge of strategy. So you're already thinking ahead of time, okay, we're going to do this. Let's say a new plan, and then let's say after 6 months, you say, okay, this is what we're going to do next year. So, and then we assemble all the employees. We say, okay, this was what we did before. This is what we're going to do now. And from tomorrow on, we're going to change. So what happens is when the co-owner, the attachment to the current situation, the bonding with the current situation, when you start work on the strategy, you're already transferring to the separate phase and hopefully also going to the grieve phase to leave the old. Yeah. But what we expect from the rest of the employees, from the moment that the new strategy is evolved, that they do let's say the separation from the old phase and the grief phase, that they do it in 15 minutes. Yeah? While we have had the time for 6 months to do that.
Yeah.
So that is also one of the things that when I see that in companies, that I make them aware of that, that they cannot expect that to happen as let's say the people make that change from one moment to the other. And that is also why in the fourth phase is with the rituals. That is why it's very important when you have done projects, for example, to do an end ritual. And an end ritual can be a debriefing of the project, that and preferably that you, let's say, talk about, and everybody who is involved can voice their experiences, both the good and the bad. So when you do that, you can end this project both rationally and psychologically and energetically. So there is that energy available for the next project. So not rocket science, but most of the time it's like, oh, we don't have time to do that end debriefing or the end ritual. And then there is not enough energy for the next project. And if you keep doing that, and so many multinationals do one reintegration after the other, and you see that people are just tired because they didn't have the opportunity to go through that cycle.
Yeah.
So that's also another reason why people get burnt out.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe a last tip to the compassionate leaders who are watching. A last tip for them.
A last tip, for me, it starts with creating awareness, and that's why I wrote a book, The Compassionate Leader. This is the whole book, Compassionate Leader, and how to create the vibe from Inspiring Vibe. But I also wrote a short ebook, only 18 pages or 70 pages, for co-owners, where I get the few most important dynamics that I see. So it's easy already to read that and to start paying attention to those dynamics. That already makes a huge difference in most companies.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here. If you want to say a last word to the people watching, up to you. Otherwise, I thank you for being here. So last word is for you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, for this interview, and I wish all the co-owners and all the other people that are watching, I wish you lots of success, and hope already clarified a few things that you saw happening in your company in this short session.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.